AMD's Fluid Motion Frames 2 just came out, and in this video I'm going to show you the performance of 6 different games utilizing Sapphire's PURE RX 7700 X2 FrostPunk 2 edition. The games we're going to be using are Final Fantasy XVI, Cyberpunk 2077, HellDivers 2,
Fire in the hole!
Star Wars Outlaws, Black Myth Wukong, and of course, FrostPunk 2. And to make it a little bit more stressful on the card, I'm actually recording off of the card. I'm not using a capture card or anything. I'm using the pure processing power of the Sapphire Radeon PURE RX 7700 XT FrostPunk 2 edition. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Now, kind of because FrostPunk 2 is the star of this game, of this video actually, we're gonna start off with FrostPunk 2. If you've never played, you might think, this isn't too graphically demanding. Out here, maybe not, though we can see we're in the 60s. If we scroll in, we can actually get into the city that we're creating, and it's pretty amazing. So zooming out of here, so again, between 50 and 60, that's not the greatest. So now, in order to make any changes, and actually let me show you what I'm working with, we're at 2560 by 1440 with unlimited frame rate, and upscaling set to TSR, and frame generation says on, but because we're using TSR, it won't work, all right? Quality and high and all that good stuff. The only way we can make changes is directly from the main menu. So I'm gonna go ahead and enable FSR 3. Okay, now enabling FSR 3 also enables frame generation, but I'm going to turn that off just for now. And let's continue with the game. Now with frame generation or FSR enabled, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help at all. Okay, so we're kind of stuck here. Now let's go ahead back into the main settings, into the main menu. And this time, let's go ahead and enable frame generation. All right. And now we can see we're in the 80s, the 90s. Everything's looking beautiful. Everything's playing beautiful. I'm not saving, that's why it keeps replaying the same spot over and over. But it's looking and playing beautiful. I have zero complaints about it. And again, zooming in and out, you might get an occasional stutter. Unfortunately, that just happens, but look at that. We're looking at everything going on here, and that's pretty awesome. They did an amazing job with this game, and AMD's done a great job with their drivers, and they're getting better every day. Look at that, we're hitting over 100 frames. Now getting further away like nothing's really going on, 140. And it's playing beautifully. So that's just using FrostPunk, using FSR and frame generation. Makes a tremendous difference. I showed you without FSR, then with FSR, and then with frame generation. It makes a tremendous difference, and the power and the cooling and everything still looks great, and we're making huge changes in performance. Now, let's move on to the next game. HellDivers 2. Started off on a bad foot there. Beautiful game. And it's a lot of fun too. We can see we're in the 70s, 80s actually. And right now we're not using any kind of FSR 3 or... Oh, come on, man. Or any kind of frame generation or anything along those lines. Everything's just playing great. Just waiting to get some help over here. There we go. And again, everything looks beautiful, plays beautiful. Zero complaints about it. Alright, Now I'm going to go ahead and enable frame generation over here, which requires RSR. And I don't know if we have any performance improvement there. We're in the 60s again. Let's play a little bit more, see what happens. Whoa. Definitely, if you haven't played this game, you need to try it. So not much of a difference with FSR 3 or AFMF2, so let's go ahead and pop it back out. Alright. Actually, it looks like we get better performance without AFMF2, which is okay. It's not meant for every single game. Look at that, we're getting 80. That's beautiful. So here we get to use the raw performance of the card, which is typically what you want, but you know, you can't always get. Alright, so HellDivers 2 is an example of allowing you to use everything your card provides, all the horsepower, without needing any of the extra eye candy stuff that, you know, some games are going to require. AFMF2 is beautiful, FSR3 is beautiful, but if we don't need them, we don't need to use them. And that's another awesome thing about the drivers, and they're not on by default. Anyway, let's move on to the next game. So in Cyberpunk 2077, the game looks beautiful as it is. And right now, we're using the Ultra preset. The Ultra preset enables FSR 2.1, which is older, but we can see, no matter what, the graphics are beautiful. The gameplay is nice as well. But we have the ability here. Now, mind you, we can turn it off. So put it at Ultra, and then I'll turn it off. But then it's not as shiny, not as beautiful. And it hurts a little bit. We're in the 50s right now. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go back in here. And they just added FSR 3 support. FSR 3 support also enables frame generation. So right now, 70 something. Much nicer than without it. But then coming back over here, let's go ahead and enable frame generation on top of FSR 3. Okay, so we got to restart the game, so 1 second. Alright, now with that enabled, look at that. 140, I need the camera to straighten out, 130 something frames per second. Beautiful. Temperatures are great as well, because I keep my house nice and cool. You might be wondering how I keep my PC so cool. It all has to do with the temperature inside your house. If your ambient temperature is, like mine, 67 degrees, the inside temperature of your PC is going to be incredibly cool. So keep your house nice and cool. That's going to keep your PC nice and cool and happy, and you're able to get max performance out of it. I don't even know if they were bad or good. They're dead. But yeah, the total experience with AFMF2 is beautiful. Although, a few little stutters there. If you remember frame generation, if there's a lot of movement, and you'll notice it in a sec, it starts to stutter a little tiny bit, and it just turns itself off. Well, that wasn't enough movement. Unless maybe it's just gotten that good.
Roger, dispatch. What else is new?
All right.
We'll be right there.
Well, without it, no, it's running great as it is. All right, so they got me in Cyberpunk, but you can see how good the performance was. It was okay, passable without FSR3. Then we enabled FSR3, became much more playable. We got in the 70s and 80s. And then we enabled frame generation and we got 140 something frames per second. That's beautiful. And now the fact that Afterburner can actually see that, we don't have to use AMD's own tool, which made me feel kind of weird using that with the predictive frame rates and all that stuff. Mind you, which it still does. But now Afterburner can pick it up, and it is just great to see that without having to use another first party, still third party application. But anyway, let's move on to the next game. Alright, so Black Myth Wukong. We can see we're getting in the 90s. I'm sure we'll hit 100 in a second. But the graphics are beautiful in this game. That little film is a bit odd, but so we've already seen we can get in the 90s. Maybe at some point we can get into the hundreds. We're at 2K, like with all the games we've been playing. Motion blur has been disabled as well. And so TSR instead of using FSR3. So I'm going to enable FSR3 now. Let's change that real quick. And get out of here. And now, well, doesn't look like it changed much with FSR3 enabled. So let's go ahead and enable frame generation here. Let's go ahead. There we go. And by the way, we're under the high preset. And now we're at 130 something frames per second. Beautiful. And actually, seeing that, let's go ahead and bump this up if we can. Very high. Oh no, just for a split second. At very high, it jumped down to the 50s. Let's see, just make sure that's not AFMF turning off. Okay, it's not. Where did he come from? Oh, there he is. Bad luck. Alright, but you can see just how great the performance is. Remind you, I don't play this game much, so I may not end up beating him. That's alright, I just wanted to show you the performance on there, not so much my performance, but the performance of the game and the card itself. You saw what it was before and it was decent. It was actually great, 80s and 90s. FSR 3 didn't do too much, but once we enabled AFMF 2, that's when it almost doubled. Didn't totally get to doubled, but you saw we were up in the hundreds, maybe 135 I think it was. But regardless of that, the performance was awesome. I need to work on my performance there. But anyway, let's move on to the next game. Jedi Outlaws is a weird one. Everything I've heard, it's incredibly buggy. Playing it,
we need to stay out of sight.
It seems solid.
I need to get their
But mind you,
attention.
I wasn't around for the beginning of it. I just got it.
Nicest place we've ever run.
Now, the difficulty is we're only getting in the 40s, maybe the low 50s. Now, like with all games here, I've been playing at 2560 by 1440 at 120 hertz. I am using the temporal anti-aliasing. I'm going to switch that now to FSR3. I want to see what else they have here. Okay, let's enable that real quick. FSR3, like you're seeing now, doesn't really do anything for the game. And I do have the filter on to make it look, the vignette filter I think it's called. But regardless, that's not a good playing experience in the 40s. So let's come in here under graphics, and let's go ahead, oops, wrong one. Let's go ahead and enable frame generation. Good thing I'm seeing that now. I didn't see it before. So now with frame generation, look at that. We're in the 60s. It feels so much more smooth. Mind you, 50s can still be considered smooth.
Nothing we can do now.
Good, we didn't alert anybody. But now you can see so much more playable.
Let's not get too comfortable.
I've never seen her before.
Power cells.
Now we're in the 70s. I am extremely happy. I didn't see that before. I thought FSR3 was the only one. So that's pretty awesome to see. Alright, so didn't mean to bore you with being so sneaky stealthy in this game, but I was able to see now. I didn't see frame generation before, so I thought it was one of those games that really didn't benefit so much from FSR3 or frame generation or AFMF2, as HellDivers didn't really do much, though it played well. This one played horribly to start with. FSR3 didn't help so much, but then we got into fluid motion frame rate, and it was a night and day kind of difference, taking you from the 40s till the low 80s. That's an awesome improvement that I can definitely stand behind. But now let's move on to the last game. Final Fantasy XVI. I just got it for this video. So it's a beautiful game as it is. Whoa, okay. And I'm still learning it. It's pretty cool. Again, I've been playing Final Fantasies since I was a kid on the original Nintendo. And my favorite was Mystic Quest. Don't hate me. But anyway, we can see it's totally playable right now. Now, by default, when you install the game, it enables FSR3 when you set preset of Ultra. So if I disable that, then we can kind of see why it's enabled by default. And nobody wants to sit through this mess of a game. Again, I just started, so I don't know where I'm going just yet. But, so if we come back in here, I'm going to set the preset back to Ultra. But this time, since you already saw what FSR3 does, I'm going to go ahead and enable frame generation. Look at that. We're immediately in the 80s. I think it was back this way. Immediately in the 80s. Look at that. 140 something. That's a tremendous improvement. Mind you, FSR3 did its thing. But if you could double the performance for free without overclocking or anything along those lines, why not do it? There was no image quality loss. It just plays and looks beautiful. Just trying to figure out where to go. 1 second. So everywhere we're going now, 140 something frames per second.
Watch out, my lord. Some of their number of spells. And what a number!
For these kind of battles, you need that speed.
Let me attend to your wounds. That'll have to be for now.
Beautiful fight, beautiful performance. We didn't lose anything in that match. With that, the graphics were still awesome. The temperature was great. Didn't draw a whole lot of power. And there's zero issues whatsoever unless you want to play at 40 frames per second, which I don't like to do. I want it to be totally smooth. What do you think? So the gaming performance on Sapphire's PURE Radeon 7700 XT FrostPunk 2 Edition is pretty awesome. The card keeps itself nice and cool as well and doesn't consume a whole lot of power. We were able to play Cyberpunk 2077 now with FSR3 support and fluid motion frames as well, and it looked and played beautiful. And Jedi Outlaw now supports frame generation as well, which I never noticed. Might have supported it before, but I saw it now and the performance was great. And HellDivers 2, we didn't actually need any kind of upscaler or fluid motion frames or anything. It just worked well. It was between the 80s and 90s, I think it was. It played incredibly well. Black Myth Wukong played decently with, no, actually that was in the 40s and 50s. We had to enable FSR3 and frame generation, and then the game played perfectly well, and it's a great game. I'm just not great at it, but anyway. And even though it is a FrostPunk 2 card, the game didn't perform that well unless we enabled frame generation and FSR3. Then we saw, or we got to see, the performance moving all around, panning in and out. Everything worked great there. And really all the games benefited except HellDivers 2 from frame generation and FSR3. I think AMD's doing an amazing job with their drivers. I did another test on an older 7700 XT from Sapphire, and that's back around the time when that card first came out and the drivers still weren't there yet. You might want to check out that video. But aside from that, now that the drivers are out and they've matured, the card's been out and everything's been doing great, I think this card is an amazing card, and the collector's edition, everything that Sapphire brings with it, is pretty awesome. Anyway, again, this is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou, showing you the performance on the Sapphire PURE Radeon 7700 XT FrostPunk 2 Edition with 6 of the newest games. Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.